A liberal host thought he had Trump cornered with a shocking question about Melania being a by G mistake. Trump's response was so powerful, it left everyone stunned. Watch this epic moment unfold. It was primetime television, millions of viewers tuned in across the country. The lights beamed down on the sleek set, cameras rolled, and the host, known for her sharp tongue and pointed questions toward conservative figures, sat poised with an artificial smile stretched across her face. Tonight was supposed to be her crowning achievement. Her team had spent weeks preparing, crafting what they believed to be the perfect trap. The plan was simple: corner Donald Trump with personal questions about his family and marriage, catch him off guard, and deliver a viral moment that would dominate headlines. As the countdown began, 3, 2, 1, Trump sat composed, legs crossed, his expression calm but alert. He had been here before, faced countless interviews designed to trip him up, but tonight something felt different. He could sense the host's anticipation, the glimmer in her eyes signaling she believed she was about to land a decisive blow. Little did she know she was about to walk straight into one of the most disastrous moments of her career. With the cameras rolling live, the host leaned forward, her polished grin unwavering. "Mr. Trump," she began, her voice sweetened with faux warmth. "You built an empire, led the country, and influenced millions. Would you say your success is simply luck?" The question hung in the air, innocent on the surface but dripping with underlying accusation, a classic maneuver: downplay his achievements, undermine his hard work. Trump tilted his head slightly, a smirk forming. "You know," he replied, his tone calm and deliberate, "that's an interesting question. Liberals love that word luck. They use it to downplay achievement, to imply that dedication and effort don't matter." The studio shifted in atmosphere as Trump's gaze locked onto hers. "But let me tell you something about luck. It doesn't build skyscrapers. It doesn't employ thousands of Americans. And it certainly doesn't make America great." The audience murmured. This wasn't the reaction the host anticipated. Her smile stiffened, but she pressed on, determined. "So," she countered, "you're claiming that everything you've accomplished is solely the result of hard work?" Trump leaned in, his voice gaining strength. "I'm saying success belongs to those who earn it. Yes, I've been fortunate, but I've also worked harder than most people can comprehend. There have been sleepless nights, deals that seemed impossible, obstacles that would have crushed others. But here's what truly matters: I've never done it alone." The host's eyebrows lifted. This was the opening she had been waiting for. Her voice dripped with feigned curiosity. "Not alone." "Let's talk about that. Who are the people behind Donald Trump?" Without missing a beat, Trump replied, "You're probably expecting me to mention business partners or advisors. But you know who truly deserves recognition? My family, especially Melania." The host's smile faltered, just slightly a crack in her facade. Her instincts kicked in. This was the vulnerability. "Ah, yes, Melania," she said, adopting a mock concerned tone. "Many wonder about her role in all of this. Some say she's unusually reserved for the wife of such a powerful man." Trump's eyes narrowed, the warmth draining from the room. The studio lights seemed to intensify the tension palpable. "Quiet," he said, "or dignified. There's a difference, though I understand why some in the media struggle with that concept." A ripple of laughter emerged from the audience, catching the host off guard. She straightened, trying to regain control. "Well," she continued, "what I mean is the public rarely hears from her, unlike other political spouses who are far more visible. Don't you think people have the right to know more about the woman standing beside you?" Trump's gaze was unwavering. "The public knows exactly what they need to about Melania. She's intelligent, accomplished, and unlike many, she speaks when she has something meaningful to say. Not everyone needs to fill every silence with empty words." The audience murmured in agreement. The host's polished confidence began to unravel. Still, she pressed forward, her tone sharpening. "Let's discuss those accomplishments," she prodded, "because some argue or at least wonder if her greatest achievement is simply being Mrs. Donald Trump." The room turned noticeably colder. Trump's jaw tightened. Even the cameramen exchanged glances. They sensed something was about to erupt. Leaning forward, Trump's voice dropped into a low, deliberate tone. "Let me make something very clear. If you want to talk about achievements, let's stick to facts. Melania speaks 5 languages. She built a successful career before she ever met me. She's represented this country with more grace and dignity than any first lady in recent history." His gaze hardened. "But you wouldn't know that, would you? Because the media is too busy pushing their version of events." The host blinked, clearly rattled, but she refused to relent. "Of course, Mr. Trump," she said, her voice thinning. "But wouldn't you agree that being married to you has provided her one advantages?" Trump chuckled, a short, humorless sound. "You mean to suggest I'm the reason for her worth?" His tone sharpened. Let me explain something. Real value isn't about whose arm you're on. It's about character, integrity, and hard work. Melania doesn't need me to validate her accomplishments. She stands on her own, but I stand by her because I respect and admire her. The studio grew silent. The host, sensing her strategy slipping through her fingers, glanced at her notes, desperation setting in. But Trump wasn't finished. His voice lowered, but every word cut through the silence like a blade. You know what's fascinating, he asked. The media preaches empowerment for women. Unless that woman happens to be conservative. Then she's dismissed, scrutinized, or now belittled. The audience erupted in applause, cutting through the tension like a tidal wave. The host's face flushed, her once confident smile replaced by a strained grimace. She reached for another question, but it was too late. The tables had turned. Her trap had been dismantled, her strategy exposed. What was supposed to be her viral moment had just become his. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. The tension in the studio had reached a boiling point. The host, her polished composure slipping, tried to navigate waters she thought she controlled. But Donald Trump had seized the narrative, turning every one of her pointed questions into a testament of loyalty, integrity, and the value of genuine relationships. The audience was hooked, murmuring with every exchange, captivated by the escalating drama unfolding live before millions. Trump leaned back in his chair after his last remark, calm but alert. The host, sensing the tide turning against her, attempted to regain control. Surely, she pressed, voice tinged with desperation. You have to acknowledge that your status, your fortune, your influence, it shapes how people perceive her. Trump didn't hesitate. His reply was swift and cutting. You mean how people like you perceive her? His gaze sharpened, drilling into her. Let me explain something about influence and wealth. They don't build character, they expose it. Through every obstacle, every attack, every unfair judgment, Melania has shown why I am honored to have her by my side. The audience erupted in applause, their clapping echoing throughout the studio. The host's confident smile had now completely faded. She shifted in her seat, clearly rattled. But what came next would not just be a slip, it would be a plunge off the edge of professionalism. Well, she began, trying to reassert her dominance. Since you brought up standing by your side, her voice gained boldness, believing she had found a crack in his armor. Let's talk about that, Mr. Trump. The relentless attention, the pressure, the scrutiny, wouldn't you say it's difficult for someone who never sought this level of public exposure? Trump's eyes narrowed slightly, his patience thinning. You know what's truly difficult? His tone was calm but edged with steel, watching the media distort reality to fit their own version of the story. Melania didn't just adjust to this life, she's flourished in it. And she's done it despite relentless attacks from the very people who claim to champion women's empowerment. The host's face flushed, a mix of embarrassment and frustration. She leaned forward, thinking she had found her angle. But the pressure must be immense, the constant travel, the public engagements, the weight of expectations. Some might say she paused for dramatic effect. It's almost like being confined in a gilded cage. The audience gasped, sensing she had crossed a line. Trump's eyebrows lifted, registering the phrase. A gilded cage, he repeated, his voice dropping into a dangerous quiet. That's an interesting phrase. Let me ask you something. Why is it that when a woman is strong and independent, the media applauds her? Unless she happens to be conservative, then suddenly she's trapped or restricted. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. The host's composure began to waver. Her argument was unraveling, and she knew it, but pride pushed her forward. I'm merely suggesting, she said, voice cracking under the pressure, that perhaps this isn't the life she envisioned for herself, always being overshadowed by. My shadow, Trump interrupted, a blend of amusement and irritation in his voice. He shook his head. I think you're confusing being in the dark with standing in the spotlight. Melania isn't in anyone's shadow, she shines on her own. But you wouldn't grasp that, would you? Because your kind of journalism isn't about truth, it's about fabricating shadows where none exist. A heavy silence fell over the studio. The producer spoke urgently into the host's earpiece, urging caution. But instead of heeding the warning, the host, pushed by pride and a desperate bid for a headline, plunged forward. Mr. Trump, she said, dropping the last of her pretense, let's cut to the chase. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. You're a wealthy, powerful man. You could be with any woman you choose. Yet you remain with someone who, she paused, letting the tension hang thick in the air, aging alongside you. Have you never considered upgrading? Gasps erupted from the audience. A cameraman involuntarily shook his head. Even the crew, usually impartial, looked on in stunned disbelief. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud upgrading as if Melania was something to be replaced. Trump didn't react immediately. He sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly he leaned forward, his eyes locking onto the hosts with a stare so intense it seemed to cut through the very air between them. Upgrading. His voice was dangerously quiet. Let me explain something about value, since that seems to be your only metric. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. In business, sure, sometimes you trade up, look for a better offer, a newer version. But this, he gestured toward himself, his family. This isn't about property or cars. This is about my wife, my partner, the mother of my son. The audience was dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Trump leaned in closer. You want to know what real value is? His voice gained strength, each word landing like a hammer blow. It's someone who stands by you when the cameras stop rolling. Someone who tells you the truth when everyone else just tells you what you want to hear. Real value is loyalty, integrity, character. His gaze burned into hers. Qualities, I might add, that clearly aren't taught in journalism school anymore. The host's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to respond, but Trump wasn't finished. Isn't it interesting, he continued, his voice growing louder, that you sit here questioning whether I've considered an upgrade, all while proving exactly why your ratings are plummeting. You fail to recognize genuine value. You fail to grasp authentic relationships. And you certainly don't comprehend true respect. Scattered applause began to echo through the room, quiet at first, then swelling as audience members nodded, some even standing. The host, now visibly shaken, tried to backpedal. I didn't mean to imply, oh, but you did, Trump cut in, voice sharp. You meant every word. And that right there, that's the problem with mainstream media. You make these statements, throw out these insinuations. And when someone calls you out, you scramble to backtrack. Well, not today. The studio had transformed into a courtroom, with Trump delivering the closing argument. The audience hung on every word, witnessing not just an interview, but a reckoning. And let me tell you something else, Trump said, leaning back for the final blow. Melania isn't just my wife. She's one of a kind, resilient, elegant, brilliant. She's faced every challenge thrown her way and not only stood tall, but thrived. He paused. And you just insulted every woman who values loyalty and real love. Trump's voice echoed through the studio, each word sharp and deliberate. The audience leaned in. This was no longer a typical interview, it was a defining moment. Melania and I have built something most people only dream of, Trump began, locking eyes with the host, a partnership. Not the kind you write about in gossip columns or try to tear down with loaded questions. The silence thickened as every person in the room sensed the shift. We faced hardships together, celebrated successes, and built a life. His words carried sincerity, cutting through the tension like a blade. You suggest I should consider trading up? Trump's voice deepened, his gaze unwavering. Let me explain something. You're implying I should replace loyalty with vanity, depth with superficiality, give up real love for what? A younger version. Gasp rippled through the audience. That's not just offensive to Melania, it's offensive to every woman watching and anyone who values genuine relationships. Applause erupted, spontaneous and powerful. The host's composure faltered, her earlier confidence slipping away. Her earpiece crackled with frantic instructions, but interrupting now would only magnify the disaster. You ask why I stay with Melania? Trump continued, his voice softening but retaining authority. Because she's one of a kind. Her resilience, elegance, intellect, and compassion, these aren't qualities you replace. They're qualities you cherish. Heads nodded throughout the studio, the crowd visibly moved. But Trump wasn't finished. And let me tell you something else, he said, his words carrying the weight of someone addressing the nation. The fact that you would even ask that question shows everything wrong with how the media treats relationships today. To you, everything's disposable marriages, commitments. Just commodities for scandal. He gestured toward the cameras. You came here for a viral moment. Congratulations, you got one. The host's smile vanished entirely as her cheeks flushed. Mr. Trump, she began, but he cut her off. No, I understand exactly what you meant. And so does everyone watching. They're thinking about their own relationships, the years they've invested, and they're appalled by your insinuation that loyalty should be traded for novelty. The audience leapt to their feet in applause. Some wiped away tears, others nodded with conviction. The host shuffled her notes, desperately seeking a lifeline, but there was none. You know what truly makes America great? Trump pressed. Our values. Our families. Our commitments. Not fleeting trends or scandalous headlines, but the unwavering support through life's ups and downs. He paused, letting the silence speak. So no, I've never considered something better, Gayer, because there's nothing better than someone who stands by you through everything. The applause grew louder, echoing throughout the studio. The balance of power had shifted. The host's earlier confidence was now a distant memory. And one last thing, Trump added, his tone final. This isn't just about me or Melania, it's about what you represent. You came in here with your pre-written traps, but instead, you've revealed what's wrong with mainstream media, prioritizing controversy over truth. He shook his head. You thought you'd humiliate me, but you've only embarrassed yourself. The tension in the studio was palpable. Every eye was on Trump, whose calm yet commanding presence had shifted the energy in the room. The host, visibly rattled, attempted to regain control. Mr. Trump, we're simply asking questions on behalf of our viewers. But Trump cut her off, his voice steady and unyielding. No, he said, raising a hand to silence her. You're not asking questions. You're trying to stir controversy where none exists. You're implying that someone in my position would naturally want to leave his wife for a younger woman because that aligns with your shallow perspective. The audience erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the studio. The host's attempt to speak was drowned out by the spontaneous support for Trump's words. He wasn't finished. Let me tell you something, Trump continued, his gaze sweeping across the audience and cameras. Real men, real leaders honor their commitments. They uphold their vows. They recognize the true worth of a strong partnership. His words resonated deeply, sparking cheers and nods of agreement. The host's face flushed. Her carefully rehearsed questions lay forgotten as she scrambled for footing. But Trump pressed on, his voice unwavering. That's the thing about real partnerships, they grow stronger over time. Every challenge faced, every triumph shared, every storm weathered, it all builds something far beyond what your shallow mindset can grasp. Desperate, the host tried once more. Mr. Trump, we're just trying to have an honest discussion. Trump let out a short laugh then, one that wasn't amused but incredulous. You want honesty? Fine. Let's be honest. He leaned forward, his words slicing through the tension. You came here hoping to humiliate me, to paint my marriage as superficial or convenient. Instead, all you've done is prove why the American people no longer trust the media. He gestured toward the audience, then to the cameras. Look around this studio. Every person here knows exactly what you were trying to do, and so does everyone watching at home. They see through these maneuvers. They recognize what genuine relationships look like. The host's face turned a deeper shade of red. Her producer, desperate, signaled for a commercial break, but Trump raised his hand once more. No, he said firmly. We're not cutting away, not until I've said what needs to be said. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the cameramen leaned in, aware they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed for years to come. You want to know why your question about trading up upsets people? Trump asked, his voice carrying both authority and heartfelt sincerity. It's not just because it's an insult to Melania. It's because it disrespects every couple who has grown older together. Every relationship that's endured hardships. Every marriage built on something far deeper than the shallow images in your Hollywood magazines. He paused, his gaze piercing the camera lens as if speaking directly to viewers across the nation. And you sit there implying that all of that should be discarded. For what? A younger face? Gasps echoed through the audience. The host attempted to respond, but her voice faltered. Trump pressed on. This isn't just about standing up for my marriage, he said, voice resolute. It's about standing up for every marriage built on true love, real commitment, and genuine values. Because that he paused for emphasis. That is what makes America great. Not the superficial ideals you promote, but the deep, lasting bonds that keep families and communities strong. Applause exploded through the room, louder than before. Several audience members stood applauding fervently. The host producer had given up trying to intervene, understanding that any interruption would only intensify the backlash. But Trump wasn't done. He took a breath, preparing to deliver the final, most powerful statement of the night. Let me leave you with this thought, he said, leaning slightly forward, voice soft yet commanding. To everyone watching, everyone who has stayed devoted to their spouse through every challenge, who has chosen commitment over convenience, who has built a meaningful life with a true partner. You are the backbone of America." The room was silent, hanging on his every word. "Not the media lights with their distorted morals," he continued, "not the Hollywood crowd with their fleeting relationships." He turned to the host, whose earlier confidence had melted into disbelief. "And as for you, I hope this serves as a lesson in real journalism, in genuine relationships, in true respect." The audience stood again, roaring with applause and cheers. The host sat motionless, visibly shaken. Her plan to corner Trump had spectacularly backfired, exposing her tactics rather than tarnishing his character. Trump glanced toward the cameras one last time. "Right now, America isn't just seeing me stand up for my wife. They're witnessing you reveal everything wrong with today's media." The audience's applause swelled to a crescendo, filling the studio with an undeniable energy. Viewers at home, regardless of political leaning, could feel the gravity of the moment. Finally, after what felt like minutes of standing ovation, the producer signaled frantically again for a commercial break. The host, voice barely above a whisper, managed, "We'll be right back," but the damage was done. Within hours, clips from the interview flooded the internet. Social media platforms exploded with praise for Trump's passionate defense of marriage and family values. Even some of his harshest critics acknowledged the mastery with which he had flipped the script. Hashtags like "Stand By Your Partner" and "Real Commitment" trended worldwide. News outlets, many that rarely favored Trump, had no choice but to cover the interview, dissecting the stunning reversal that had unfolded live on national television. Pundits debated, commentators analyzed, and viewers discussed how a planned ambush had become an iconic display of loyalty and conviction. Trump's final words, replayed millions of times, struck a chord across the political spectrum. Real relationships aren't about seeking something better. They're about standing firm together. Through storms, through victories, through life. And in that defining moment, one truth was undeniable: what was meant to be Trump's undoing had become his greatest televised triumph. There are moments in life that remind us of the true value of love, loyalty, and respect. This story isn't just about a tense interview or a dramatic exchange between a politician and a television host. It's a profound lesson about commitment, resilience, and the worth of genuine relationships. In today's world, where surface-level glamour is often celebrated more than inner depth, it's easy to forget that true love cannot be replaced or upgraded. Trump's words echoed a powerful message. Success isn't measured only by wealth or status. It's measured by the people who stand by you through every high and low in life. We live in a society where media and public opinion can be quick to judge, often overlooking the silent sacrifices and deep-rooted stories behind every person. This story reminds us to cherish those who quietly support and love us unconditionally, be it a spouse, family member, or true friend. The biggest takeaway: never judge a relationship by what you see on the surface. Find value in loyalty, patience, and kindness. Lasting relationships are built on empathy, understanding, and the conscious choice to love each other every day, no matter how life changes. And remember, the greatest success isn't in the spotlight, it's in the people who still hold your hand when the lights go out.